Hello, my name is Joeli Brearley and I'm the founder and CEO of the campaign group and charity Pregnant Then Screwed. The reason why I started Pregnant Then Screwed was because when I was 4 months pregnant with my first child, I informed my employer that I was pregnant, and the next day they sacked me by voicemail. My employer was a children's charity, so it just goes to show that sadly, no sector is immune from this behavior. And after I experienced that discrimination and obviously was terrified, had no idea where my next income was going to come from, had no idea how I was going to pay my rent or put food on the table, I managed to get a lawyer. And the lawyer wrote the charity a letter demanding I be compensated for that experience. The charity just threw that letter in the bin. And I asked the lawyer what would happen next. And they said, you can take them to tribunal. And I said, how much will that cost me? And they said it would cost in the region of £10,000. Now, of course, I didn't have £10,000. I don't really know anybody who has £10,000 just sloshing around in a bank account. So I said, okay, let me think about it. And then I went for a routine hospital appointment and was told that I was having a high-risk pregnancy and that the baby could arrive at any point. And had he arrived then, he would only have been 20 weeks, so he would have died. So they rushed me into surgery and did a delightful process, which was meant to try and keep the baby in position. And when I was recovering from the operation, the doctor came over and said, look, this may not work. It's got about a 30% success rate. So whatever you do, you need to reduce stress in your life. So because that can trigger early onset labor. Now, of course, taking an employer to tribunal is pretty much the most stressful thing that you can do. And as you only have 3 months to raise a tribunal claim from the point the discrimination occurs, I was forced to drop the case. I was literally left with the choice between accessing the justice that I deserved or protecting the health of my unborn child due to the way that our justice system works. Obviously, I dropped the case. I really had no choice. I couldn't live with myself if I'd gone through with it, and my baby would have died. But then that meant that I suddenly found myself lying on a sofa, rubbing my belly, begging my baby to stay put. My career had vanished. I had no income. I was now completely reliant on my partner to pay my way so that I could stay in my house and keep food on the table. And so I'd gone from being what felt like relatively successful, growing a career, really excited about having a baby, to suddenly nothing. And all I was good for was as a vessel for this growing fetus, and I wasn't even doing that very well. It felt like I was also failing at that, as well as failing at having a job, as well as failing at providing an income. And this left me lying on a sofa watching daytime TV for at least 3 weeks, questioning why this had happened. And that, in a sense, radicalized me. It made me realize how different the world is for women to what it is for men. And it was after I'd had my baby, he's now a very healthy 9-year-old boy. He stayed put and was born very healthy, that I started to question why the world was so different for women. And this experience ate away at me until it then happened to a friend of mine. She also got pushed out of her job for having a baby. And then I started going to parent groups and talking to other mothers about their experiences. and discovered that, far from mine being an isolated incident, actually the number of mothers that told me they'd experienced some form of discrimination in the workplace for getting pregnant or for taking maternity leave was extraordinary. And so one morning, it was International Women's Day, I woke up and decided, right, today's the day I'm going to do something about this, because I just cannot allow this to eat away at me any longer. I need to feel like I'm doing something proactive. And I'd already come up with the title Pregnant Then Screwed, which is obviously a play on words. And I taught myself how to use WordPress in the morning while bouncing a baby on one knee and shoehorning porridge into his mouth and using the other hand to teach myself WordPress. And by the afternoon, I'd launched a website called Pregnant Then Screwed, and it was a place for women to tell their stories of pregnancy and maternity discrimination anonymously. And at first, it was really difficult to get women to tell their stories because they're scared. This is a traumatic experience in their lives. Many of them have signed non-disclosure agreements, which gag them and prevent them from being able to talk publicly about what has happened to them. For others, they don't want to be identified because they work in very small sectors, and they don't want to be branded a troublemaker because it means they won't be able to get another job. But eventually I did encourage a number of women to tell these stories. And then it was picked up by the Victoria Derbyshire show. I was invited to go on. And so were a couple of women who'd experienced pregnancy discrimination. And then that was it. It was, my inbox started pinging like mad with all these different experiences, tragic, horrendous experiences, from a woman who was told to do a shot of vodka every morning to prove that she wasn't pregnant, to a woman who was bullied and harassed so viciously by her colleagues and by her employer when she announced that she was pregnant, that she went into labour prematurely. And when she was in the neonatal clinic with her baby who could have died, her boss called her and made her redundant. And then there was the woman who'd worked for the same employer for 6 years. She was doing really well. Her boss told her she deserved a promotion. She had to go for an interview, but it was just a formality. The job was in the bag. Before the interview, she told her boss that she was pregnant. She didn't get the job. And when she asked her boss why, he said he had discussed things with his wife and they had decided that this wasn't the right thing for her, that her priorities would change. And so they decided she shouldn't get the promotion. The many extreme stories about women being kicked out of their jobs from the point that they get pregnant, as well as bullying and harassing from staff and employers, as well as redundancies, as well as things like flexible working requests being rejected, which makes it impossible for women to do their paid labour and their unpaid labour, therefore forcing them out of their job. And so as these stories started flooding in, people were asking me for help, and I am not an employment lawyer, so I couldn't offer the support that they needed. And I happened to meet an employment lawyer in Manchester. We actually met on Mumsnet, bizarrely, and we went for a cup of tea and a chat, and I asked her if she'd help me set up a support service so she would give women free legal advice, and she agreed, much to my surprise. And at first she was doing these calls from the bath, she would call back 2 or 3 people in the evening and give them legal advice. And then it grew and grew and grew. And last year we supported over 5,000 women through that same free legal advice service. And then we realized that there was also a problem with women taking legal action against employers. We know that fewer than 1% of women who experience pregnancy and maternity discrimination even raise a tribunal claim because it's so difficult to do. And so we thought, how can we help? And we then set up a mentor program. So women who've been through an employment tribunal themselves, supporting other women that were about to start that process. And we've supported over 300 women now to take full legal action against their employer, which often results in a settlement, a payment that means that they can survive for a few months, if not longer, without a job, so that they can recover from this experience of discrimination. and spend more time with their children. We also set up the campaign in America, Spain, and Sweden. And since then, we then started campaigning. So our first campaign was to extend the tribunal time limit, so that rather than having just this 3 months to raise a claim from the point that discrimination occurs, people have at least 6 months. You know, obviously that was the thing that caused me all the problems. So that was our first campaign, and we've since been campaigning on childcare, flexible working, parental leave, to ensure that dads have access to proper paternity leave that's paid at a proper rate, because we know that most dads only take 2 weeks off, if that, and that's very unfair on them, and it's very unfair on the other parent. Advice that I would give to other people who are considering starting their own campaigning would be, firstly, you need to identify how you can sustain this campaigning. Most campaigns will not be won very quickly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so you've got to be ready and prepared to invest a lot of time and energy into this work. And for many, the reason why many campaigns start and then don't continue is because you run out of steam. And so you need to think from the outset, how can I make this work for me, both in terms of my time, but also financially? You know, don't be scared to consider a financial model from the outset, because we all need money, right? We all need money to eat and to keep roofs over our heads. So the way that we did that was through donations. We did a crowdfunder to kick things off. And since then, we've secured money from trusts and foundations, as well as from donations from individuals that benefit from our campaigning. And also we've now started to come up with some commercial models around training for employers. So diversifying your income streams, thinking about how you can make this really sustainable is really, really important. I would also say that you, as a campaigner, campaigning is hard. It can be brutal. It can be really taxing on you personally. But it can also be joyful. So to finish off, I would encourage everyone, if there's something that you feel angry about, that you feel isn't working, something that you have hit against repeatedly, then it's undoubtable that other people have had a similar experience. So do a call out, go on social media, talk about the problem that you're experiencing, and you will find other people who also care about this issue. And from there, you can start thinking about small things that you can do to make a change in the life of others, as well as in your life. And don't bite off more than you can chew while you're doing that. That would be absolutely my key message. Small changes make such a big difference, even if it's just in your local community. And good luck.